Hey everyone, today we're going to be looking at the lens blur feature in Adobe Lightroom Classic. Depth of field refers to the amount of your scene that's in focus when you capture an image. So it will determine the areas that are blurry, the areas that are in focus, and where those points occur within your image. Up until quite recently, we've only been able to control that using optical methods. So the lenses we use, aperture, focal length, and how close we are to our subject will all affect the depth of field we get. But more recently, we've had digital methods to change those parameters. So if you've got a smartphone, you might have a feature that will automatically blur out the background, and we're seeing it find its way into software as well. And recently, at the time of recording, there's a new feature in Lightroom called lens blur that will do just this. So we know it works really well in phones and things like that, but how does it work in Lightroom? Let's dive in and have a look. Okay, so here we are in the latest version of Lightroom Classic. You'll see down here on the right hand side we've got this new feature called lens blur. It is an early access feature at the time of recording. That means it's in development, but it does have all of the full features in the latest release version of Lightroom Classic. So this is the image I want to work on. I captured this last week in my street photography video. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a link up top so you can go back and watch it. I was quite pleased with this image at the time. I quite liked the subject matter, but one thing I didn't like about it was there wasn't enough separation between the subject and the background. So that's what I want to work on today. I want to try and create a more blurry background using lens blur. So we'll just drop this down, and all you need to do to start with is just click apply. So you'll see that's already done something. It's used AI to automatically work out the subject in the scene. It's created a depth map and it's applied blur to the more distant areas. We can change that blur amount by decreasing or increasing this slider. So you'll see I've got a more blurry background now. And we can affect the character of that blur by dropping this arrow down here next to bokeh and choosing a bokeh character. So there are different ones. If you hold your cursor over one of them, it'll give you a little pop-up which just gives you a little description. So you see there we've got circle, that's a modern circular lens. The next one is bubble, so standard circular shape with overcorrected spherical aberration. The next one is a more vintage look, so it will emulate an aperture that's created by 5 blades. So these are typically seen in vintage lenses. I know you can't see that little pop-up now, it's just popped off the edge of the screen. The next one is ring. So this one says commonly seen in reflex or mirror lenses, also known as a donut. So I did use a reflex lens recently, and this will emulate the bokeh that that type of lens produces. And this one is cat eye, which typically is caused by optical vignetting in certain lenses. So if I just zoom in on an area like this, I'm going to increase the boost here because what this does is just increases the effect of that character of the bokeh. It'll make it a bit more prominent so we can see what's happening. If I click on this one now, you see how the bokeh changes in character. We can do that again with the vintage one. We've got the donut one. You see you really get those rings now. And cat eye. So I'm just going to leave it on the modern one for now, circular, and we'll move on to the next set of parameters. And that is focal range. So this is the depth map in the image basically. It will determine what areas are in focus and what are out of focus. So we can visualize the depth by clicking the little tick box next to visualize depth down here. And you see we've got different colors now. We've got yellow, orange and purple. Purple is the most out of focus area. Then we've got yellow, which is closer to the camera but out of focus. And the most in focus areas is this in between, the kind of orangey colour. And we can change what area of the scene is selected. By default it will try and detect the subject in the scene. It's done a pretty good job with this one and selected the woman and the dogs, but also this sculpture on the left. We can also click on this little icon down here, and now we can click on anywhere in the scene. So we can click on the background here with these people, and you see now those are in focus, but the lady is out of focus. We can also click and drag like that, and it'll do the same thing. We can also use this little slider bar down here for a little bit more fine control, and we can move that around and that will change the plane of focus within the image. So you'll notice that these colours in the bar chart correspond to the colours in the depth map. So here you see the yellows. When we move our bar over the yellows, that's what will become in focus. If we move it down here towards the purples, they'll be more in focus. And you'll also notice as I move that, it will highlight what is going to become in focus or not. So the in focus areas, as I move it, will be white. So you see there the lady and the dogs. If I turn off the visual depth, the lady is in focus there. And we can also increase the depth of field by extending that bar. So if I want the lady all the way back into the distance to be in focus, I can bring that over the purple areas there. And now we've got more or less focus from the lady to the back of the image. Don't forget, this image was slightly out of focus in the background to start with as I took it out of camera. So we'll never get that fully in focus at the background. But if you had an image that was fully in focus from front to back, you would be able to control that fully and have that fully in focus by manipulating this little slider down here. If you have selected something else within the scene to be in focus, you can get back to your subject selection by clicking on this little icon, and once again it will automatically select the subject in your scene. Okay, so that's great, but you'll notice that the lead, which is closest to the camera, is slightly out of focus. If I just zoom in on that, you see it's missed a little bit of the lead where it should be nice and sharp and in focus, and in fact it's blended it in with the background and made it out of focus. So what we're going to need to do is just slightly refine our mask, and we can do that by just clicking the little arrow next to the word refine down here, and now you'll see we've got two options, focus and blur, and these are brushes basically, and they'll do exactly what they say. The focus one will let you brush in an area that's in focus, and the blur one will let you brush in an area that is blurred. So I want to use the focus one to make the lead in focus. I'll click on that. We'll just zoom in a little bit actually, maybe to about 200%, and click on focus again. I'll use my square bracket keys. So these are the two keys to the left of the return key on your keyboard. The left square bracket will make your brush smaller, right square bracket will make it bigger. We can change the feather amount, so you can hold shift and use the square brackets, and that will make the brush more or less feathered. You see we get that outer ring there which defines the feathered area. So I've got slight feathering on the brush there, but not too much. And we can just start brushing that on there, and you see we've got a little area that's come into focus. What we can do just to help ourselves out is draw a straight line with this by clicking once up here, then holding shift on our keyboard and then clicking once down here, and that will connect those two areas and draw a straight line between the two. So you can spend a bit more time than me doing this. I'm going to be doing this quite quickly just for demonstration. But you see we've got some areas just at the edge of the lead there which might need the blur brush just to blur those back out. And we've also got an area of the coat here that's missing, so I'll click on focus and just bring that back in. So like I said, spend a bit more time than me doing that, but you get the point. We've got that refined now, and we've got those areas in focus, and it's starting to look a little bit more plausible. So just a couple of things to wrap up. If you have captured an image with a device that will automatically embed a depth map, such as an iPhone, like this image has been taken with, then you can use that depth map to apply your blur effects. So you'll notice that when we've got an image selected, which does include one of those depth maps, we've got three little dots in the top right hand corner of the palette. We can click that, and you can't see that, it's just popped off screen, but we've got a little tick next to use device depth, and we can tick that on or off. So with it turned on, it'll be using the depth map that's defined by the device. If we turn that off, then it will reanalyze the scene and it'll create a depth map using the AI within Lightroom. And the second thing is that if you want to use the healing brush tool in an image that has had lens blur applied, you'll notice you get this warning. So it'll say healing edits are applied to the unblurred image, and for best results you're best turning off the lens blur effects. So you would come down here, untick apply, do your healing brush amends, and then you can come back to the lens blur and reapply that effect. So this is a really useful tool for creating a shallow depth of field effect in your image, particularly if you weren't able to create that effect at the time in camera. But remember, this uses AI and it's an approximation of real life. It does a really good job and it looks quite plausible, but it's never going to be quite the same as using a real lens. So if possible, get out there, use your lens, use a wide aperture, a longer focal length, or get closer to your subject, or a combination of those things, and that'll help to create that shallow depth of field and a blurry background, or foreground if that's what you want. I hope you found this video useful. If you have, just give me a thumbs up down below, that's really helpful. And massive thank you for watching. If you're a regular, I really do appreciate it. I say it every week, but I really do. And if you're new to the channel and you're not yet subscribed and you'd like to do so, you can click down there on the big red button, or over here on this picture of me, and that way you'll stay up to date with everything I'm doing each and every week. There's a new video every Sunday morning at 10 AM UK time. So I hope you'll join me next week for the next one. But until then, thanks a lot everyone, and bye for now.